This is Glambition Radio, episode number 229 with Dr. Lois Frankel, author of Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. Man, today we've got a great show for you. Dr. Lois Frankel is the author of the classic book. It's been around for years, but still talked about all the time. Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And I remember when this came out, and I remember reading it and going, wow, someone's finally talking about what I can do in these business situations to get my ideas heard, to feel more powerful, to get the attention I need from my projects and to move up and lead. And even though I ended up not staying in a traditional business or corporate environment, these skills are still ones that you can apply every day. And I will say a lot of the things she talks about are the same things I still identify that many women and some of my clients need help with. Speaking strongly, learning how to negotiate. That's part of leadership. So you're going to love this today because not only are we going into her story and how this all happened, but she teaches practical tips you can use today to negotiate more money and speak more strongly, all this stuff. So it was such a good interview. I can't wait for you to hear it. Quick shout out, though, to 2 reviews that my team pulled for me from Apple Podcasts. Thank you. Amy Shoot. She says, I love this podcast, such thoughtful interviews and the kind of wisdom and advice high-performing biz women need right now. And the next is from MMP Jan, says, the big mess in the middle. Oh, she's referring to the solo episode I did a few weeks ago. Thank you so much for bringing this to the front of the conversation. So right, especially about making more money than ever and how that is critical for us going forward. Thanks for the gentle kick in the pants that now is the time to step up, step out, and lead us through the times we are in. Thank you for seeing that. And if you haven't heard that episode, you want to go back and listen to it. It was a bit of a wake-up call for everything going on right now. It was called The Big Mess in the Middle, and it was episode 225. I dropped that on September 2nd. There's going to be a part 2, which I'm working on right now. In fact, I'm judging, do I really say what I want to say? Or those moments you're like, how much should I really say here? There's going to be a lot said. I'm kind of figuring out where to draw the line. You're going to get a lot out of it either way. So stay tuned for the next solo. And a reminder that Glambition Radio is sponsored by The Trust, my new private premier network for 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. We just had a fantastic meeting here in Scottsdale just 2 weeks ago. It feels like so long ago, ladies, if you're listening. I miss you so much already, but we will be online together. And we have another event planned for March in Miami Beach. So we will be gathering again. So take a look. If this interests you, go to jointhetrust.org. Or if you know another woman who's in the 7- or 8-figure range, and she may be part of some great networks, and those are fine, but she's kind of craving something different. She's craving something that's a little different flavor. More elevated conversation, a modern platform for high-performing women. We're doing something different. Jointhetrust.org. And by the way, we're now on Instagram. So our handle on Instagram is Join the Trust. Come follow us there. I'll post a lot more photos and things behind the scenes there than I will on my personal accounts. Now, get ready. She's got a new audiobook out called Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out, Dr. Lois Frankel. Dr. Frankel, I would like to know where you are right now.
Oh, and first, please call me Lois, Ollie. I'm in Pasadena, California.
And how is it there? What's going on in California these days?
With the fires, it's kind of smoky, and it's a little bit better today, but it's been so smoky. I mean, the smoke even woke me up one night, and I shouldn't complain because my house is safe and everybody I know and love is safe. But, it's just kind of smoky and it's been hot. And anyway, so that's kind of how it's been lately here. But usually it's beautiful and it's a great place to have to shelter in place.
Yeah. And on the West Coast, we can't complain, right? Through all this, we were swimming in April here in Arizona, like hiking.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like they do bike riding and tennis, and all these things. So, you get to do all these things. So you really can't complain.
So for some reason, because over the years, I actually had not heard you speak, but I had your books and I pictured you as a New Yorker for some reason. I think it just was just the tough, then the nice girls don't get the corner office and listen, ladies, and let's make this happen. And, have you lived in California your whole life?
No, you nailed it. I am a New Yorker. I'm originally from New York. I was born on Staten Island. I was raised on Long Island, went to school up. My undergraduate work was at SUNY Oswego. So no, I am a New Yorker, definitely.
Okay. And so, I just remember when I picked up that first book, it was so refreshing to have someone just really tell you what the deal was, right? Whether you liked it or not, like, here's what we could do better. Here's what we're not doing so well. Here's what you need to do. How did this all happen? How did this become kind of your mission to help women? If we could start how that first book developed and became or that actually wasn't your first book, was it?
It wasn't my first book, but it was the first book that made the bestseller list.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting because it was never my intention to be this spokesperson for women in the workplace or to be a champion. I was an executive coach. And so as an executive coach, I was coaching mainly men. And every once in a while, I'd get a woman. And the reason I was coaching mainly men was because I only coached people in Fortune 500 companies, and they were referred to me by the company. So the company was paying the bill. Mm-hmm. And so that's who they invested in. They invested in men. But every once in a while, I had a woman. And I was coaching this one woman in Herndon, Virginia. And she was sent to me for coaching because she was a little bit on the aggressive side of assertive. I guess we call those women a bitch, huh? And I went to a coaching session, and she said, I just wanted to tell you before we start that I was invited to sit on the executive committee of my company. And I went to give her a high five, and she stopped me. And I said, what? And she said, I'm not going to go to those meetings. They're a waste of time. And what popped out of my mouth was, honey, you got to quit being a girl. And Ollie, at that moment, every mistake that I saw women make in the workplace started flooding into me. I thought, she's not going to those meetings because she thinks she needs to be productive 100% of the time. And as I said to her, they're called meetings. They're not called workings. Mm-hmm. People go to meetings to see and be seen and get information, give information, market their brand, and so forth. I said, that's why you go to meetings. And so on the plane home from Herndon, Virginia to Los Angeles, I outlined all of what became what I was calling quit being a girl. Mm. And it was not hard to come up with 101 things at all. It was actually quite easy. When I started thinking of all the things I thought.
I have to ask, did you have a glass of wine at the time too? Or were you just like, I'm just going to go off and make this list?
You know what? I probably did. I probably did. And so, I had the whole thing outlined. And so that's what I was calling it, quit being a girl. And then when I sold it to Time Warner Books, they said, we want to change the name to Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And I said, but, people are going to think that I'm saying you can't be nice and be successful. And they said, well, part of the contract is we get to name it.
Wow.
And I said, all right, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life explaining this, which is true. I have, but it's a nice thing to have to explain that when we talk about nice girls can't get the corner office, we're talking about you can't be the nice little girl you were taught to be in childhood and expect to achieve your adult goals.
Oh, I remember getting it. I'm actually surprised they came up with it. Usually the publishers come up with the worst titles, and then the author's like, no, I remember getting it immediately. I'm like, ooh, this is good because though there's a pocket of us listening. I'm going to venture to say the majority of my listeners, we may veer more on the bitch side. I don't even know what to want to say, we're an ambitious bunch. This isn't a boss babe podcast. Like, we're not here to just, make this all cute and have fun. We're running real companies. We're running real businesses. And so I think the challenge for us, I felt it was just very validating to say, like, yeah, it's okay to be. I knew exactly what you meant. I'm like, it's okay to be assertive. It's okay to ask for what you want and have boundaries and not be asked to fetch the coffee at the meetings when you're on the same level as everyone else. And I mean, what was the immediate response to the book? Did people get it?
Oh gosh, I have to tell you, the immediate response was so positive. It made the bestseller list within the first week or two. I continue. It has been, the first version came out about 15 years ago. Then about 5 years ago, I put out a 10th anniversary edition with more mistakes that people told me about as I went around the world. And so, yeah, family members were telling me that they were like at the gym and saw women reading it on the treadmill or sitting on the steps of their building reading it. It was like, it became quite a phenomenon, which I just didn't expect. I mean, having written books before that really didn't do anything. Just didn't expect it. But it was really nice that it touched hearts and minds. And it still does, because I still get letters from people. I probably get a couple a week now.
Wow.
From people who've read it and said, can you just give me advice about this or that?
Wow. So tell me what happened from that point, and then how you work with women, and then the evolution of your books, wherever you'd like to go.
Yeah, and I'll do part of this from a standpoint of an entrepreneur, so that, as I told you, I was working primarily with Fortune 500 companies because my model always was, I want clients who don't look at the checkbook when they write the check.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There are a lot of coaches out there, and they were working one-on-one with people. And I was thinking, this is not the way to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just stuck with my model that I only work with Fortune 500 companies, and they need to refer the client to me and they need to pay the bill. So when it first came out, and all of a sudden I was this spokesperson for women, I was losing male clients. And I talked to this woman who she actually had guided part of, was it Dr. Laura's career? Yeah, Laura Ingraham, I think. She had guided part of her career. And she said, Lois, you have to understand, now you're a brand. So you need to go with the brand. And I said, yeah, but I'm cutting out like half of my potential clients here.
You created a reluctant mission.
Yeah, I did. I absolutely did. And she said, and I'll never forget this. She said, it's counterintuitive, but when you narrow your market, you get more of the business. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to ride this horse. And I did. And it has been a great ride for 15 years. I kept my business, but I had other people doing a lot of the coaching, because eventually, because I was traveling so much, I really couldn't do the kind of coaching I like to do, which is pretty intensive. And so I was just traveling around the world and doing keynotes around this. But the business is still in place, Corporate Coaching International in Pasadena, and I still have coaches that do the coaching. And I do primarily speaking and writing books at this point. And it has proven true that you narrow your market, you get more business. And this was something that, again, it was counterintuitive, but I see it very clearly now. And I tell entrepreneurs that all the time.
I want to point out a decision you made that I think a lot of the women listening can learn from, and that is, it wasn't an either or decision, though. You still said, this company and this company's mission will live on, but I don't have to be the spokesperson for this in particular. I'm out doing this. The company's going to grow and make money. I can empower other coaches. They went together pretty nicely, because then your brand still supported the company.
Yeah, the brand still supported the company. It was difficult for my corporate clients not to have me as their contact, because, and that's another thing you'll learn.
Mm-hmm.
I called my company Corporate Coaching International, probably because I named it in 1987. But if I had to name it today, I'd probably call it Lois Frankel Associates or something like that, because you are the brand. And people, I'd hear them say it. I'd hear them say, call Lois Frankel's outfit.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get you hooked up with a coach. They didn't say call Corporate Coaching International. So I kind of had a transition from being their contact and making them comfortable with the people I had in place to run the business subsequently. And, eventually, I would say after about 2 years, most people didn't even know that I was the head of the company,
Okay.
which was fine with me because I was
Yeah.
doing exactly what I love to do.
Yeah. Well, then it's sellable though if it's not too attached to you as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I know you may want to think about that, but just I
Yeah.
don't mean to.
No, the problem is it would have been really sellable back then. There has been a proliferation in coaches.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everybody calls themselves a coach. People who were hairdressers and thought they were good with people started coaching businesses. So it diluted the market significantly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know you know a bit about my background, but I was one of the first online marketing coaches back in like 2002. And man, that was the decade, before social. Well, social media is what leveled the playing field. Social media, there's no barrier to entry and everyone moved into coaching. And there's still some great coaches out there, but I agree it's become a very saturated field. So if you have a specific niche and brand, it's going to help you. And when you look at now how, you have taken you went with the brand, obviously, because you had a few more things come out. The latest, it's an audiobook, right? You don't have a print book yet? The Nice Girls Don't Speak Up?
That's correct. I pitched it as, a paperback book. But when I started reading it, I realized this doesn't lend itself to the page. And so I called them back and I said, I want this to be an audio book. And they agreed. And so Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out is really me narrating this book that teaches people how to communicate in ways that are really very powerful. And I wrote it, Ollie, because at the end of keynote addresses, people would come up to me and say, gee, I wish I had you on my shoulder so that you could whisper in my ear what I was supposed to say in this situation or that situation. And they'd ask for referrals for books. And I'd say, there's a lot of good books out there, but I just can't think of one that puts it all together. So finally I said, well, I'm going to put it together.
Yeah.
And I just put all my coaching tips for communication together into one book.
Would you mind sharing? I know that you get asked this all the time, but some of the top things that, the women listening right now who maybe aren't familiar with your work, what are some of the things to you that have been so clear that are simple shifts that women could make right now in how they communicate, how, they're speaking, how they're positioning, wherever you'd like to go, but some takeaways that we can put to use?
Okay, let me give you 3. The first one would be communicating in headlines. That many women use too many words before they get to the point. They use a preamble and they use explanations, and then, people roll in their eyes saying, where are you going with this? And what's your point? I mean, I do it when people do that, and women tend to do it more than men do it. And I think we do it because the more words you use, you always soften a message. The fewer words you use, you strengthen a message. And I think that women unconsciously want to soften their messages so they don't get called a bitch. And what they don't realize is using more words and over-explaining isn't going to do that. Okay, it's just not going to do. People just aren't going to care. You're going to become inconsequential, which is even worse than being called a bitch, in my opinion. So I tell women you need to start using headlines where the first thing out of your mouth has to be the most important thing you want someone to remember, and you follow that up with 2 or 3 pieces of supporting information. If you want to be seen as collaborative, you add in a tagline, and a tagline sounds something like this. Ollie, you can hear I feel strongly about this. I'd also like to know what your thoughts are so that we can put all the best ideas together and move forward.
I love that. I love that because you start strong and it gets attention, but that you're letting them know, listen, I'm open, as you usually should be, to alternative viewpoints and other ideas.
Exactly. And men don't have to use the tagline because men are allowed
That's
to.
not fair.
It's not fair. I just finished a webinar just like 20 minutes ago with a group that said, why is the onus always on women? And I said, the onus is on women because you live in a white male system and they define the rules. If you want to know why, that's why.
Also, because they don't care about your opinion. That's why they don't have the tagline.
They don't. But we expect women to care, don't we? We expect them to care. And even when we don't care, we have to pretend that we care. I mean, that's part of being an actor on a corporate stage. You play the part you're expected to play. I did the headline just now with you when I said, let me give you 3 examples, right? So you're listening for the 3 examples, and I'm saying to myself, okay, I said I was going to give her 3 examples. So that was one. Let me go back to my second one. It keeps you on track, and it keeps the listener on track too. So headline communications is one of the things women can do right away. A second thing women need to learn to do is negotiate. We don't negotiate because we think of negotiation as confrontation. And we want everybody to like us, right? And so we avoid difficult conversations, particularly when they have to do with asking for what we want. Now, women do need to negotiate differently than men. Men can be tough negotiators and get away with it. Women will damage a relationship if they do that. For years, women have said, when I negotiate like a man, I get called a ball buster or whatever it is. Well, now the research shows it's true because we don't expect women to negotiate like men. Women need to negotiate from a place of focus on both the relationship and the outcome. So, for example, if I was negotiating for a salary, let's just say I got hired and they offered me something less than what I want. A nice girl is going to take that salary and say, I'm going to show them how good I am. And in 6 months, I'll go back and I'll ask for more money. Well, that's not a good strategy, right? It's not a good strategy because you kind of lost your leverage. Your leverage is when they want you to come on board. And so negotiating like a woman would be using some techniques like contrasting. So contrasting says I'm going to contrast what I do want and what I don't want. And then I also use data, facts, and figures when negotiating because facts are friendly. So it might sound like this. It might sound like, I don't want you to think that I'm not excited about coming to work for you because I absolutely am. At the same time, if I took this offer, I wouldn't respect myself, and I don't think you'd respect me either. And so I want to talk about how we bring this up to about 25% that would be consistent with what the market pays, that would reflect what my last salary was, and that would make me delighted to come and work for you.
Oh my God, you're so good. How do you This is amazing. I just could listen to you all day. That's why I did an audiobook. I love this.
That's why it's a book. Yeah. But that's an example of using contrasting, using headlines, putting it together, using data, facts, and figures, right? I put it all together in that one place. And so I don't sound like I'm a ball buster. I sound like somebody who, really wants to be here and also doesn't want to be a pushover.
Could I jump in for a sec, or is that going to derail? Wait, was that number 2? I was entranced.
That was number 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you okay if I pause for a second? I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm sure you're like perfectly capable of pulling in a number 3 after I speak.
Sure.
What's fascinating about that is, you do see women get advised to like have an opinion, right? But they're not often prepared. It doesn't sound solid because they don't have the backup information included.
Right.
And that's when they're labeled other things and emotional and all this stuff. Instead of it comes as a package, doesn't it? When you give an opinion or a strong statement, the backup has to be right there.
Absolutely. You need to have, like I said, facts are friendly. One of the aspects of true persuasion is making a proposal and providing the data, facts, and figures, right? Facts are friendly. And so if you don't do that, why should anybody listen to you? Or you're right. If I were to have just said, you're offering me what? You don't really expect me to come and work for you at 25% less than I'm currently getting. That sounds emotional. Okay. But when I use the facts, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is logical. And you have to remember, particularly when you're speaking to men, they want the logic behind it. They don't want the emotion.
Yeah. You got to connect the dots for them. Right.
Yeah, you do, because they don't connect it themselves.
Yeah. Connect the dots a bit. All right, great. So that was number 2.
That was number 2. And I would say number 3 is letting people either man-interrupt you or appropriate your ideas. Right? That's kind of 3 and 4, but I consider them 1 because it's ways in which men communicate with you that you feel like you're losing your power. So when men interrupt you, you need to interrupt the interrupter. You need to be able to say, hang on a second. And even as I said that, my hand went up. Talk to the hand. Hang on a second. I wasn't quite finished. Okay. Now, if that's impossible to do, you let them finish, and then as soon as they finish, you jump in and say, let me pick it up where I left off because I wasn't quite finished. And you just ignore what he just said. What most women will do will say, well, that was kind of interesting what you said, Bob, and blah, 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 blah. You don't have to say all that. He interrupted you. You can just, as soon as he's finished, say, let me pick it up where I left off. I wasn't quite finished.
Yeah.
And that's all you do. That's for manterrupting. When it comes to appropriating, that's when men steal your ideas as their own. And a lot of women will say to me, well, what difference does it make? Who gets credit for the idea? Well, what difference it makes is that people who come up with the best ideas get the best rewards. So you want to be known for having good ideas, especially if you're entrepreneurial or if you're intrapreneurial as well. And so when somebody steals your idea, what you're going to do, and you got to do this with a really straight face, you're going to let them finish saying what they're going to say. And then you say, hey, Bob, thanks for expanding on my idea because it made me realize there were some other things I'd like to add. And that's what you do.
So true, Bob. There's always a Bob.
There's always a Bob.
Yeah.
That there's always a Bob and a Karen lately, right? But don't be a Karen.
I love that though, because that was an effortless. And then it's like Bob helps support your idea. He literally was. Once you grab that back, it's yours, and he just helped you. It's a win-win.
It really is. And you don't have to be mad, and you don't, it's like the challenge for women, Ollie, is you have to be able to tell people to go to hell so that they look forward to the trip. That's really how women have to communicate. Men don't have to. Women have to.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a bit of a loaded question because you were like I call you like the OG, like original gangster woman who talked about this stuff, right? Like you're like the original crew, like you've been through so much wisdom to share. In the grand scope of things, do you think more of this is women learning what to do, or do you think there's a little too much blaming of the males right now in the business culture? Where's your observations over the years? Did you get where I'm going with that?
I get where you're going with that. And what's going through my head is in Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out, I always say, or I said, when someone asks you a don't you think question, it is almost never a question. What it is they have an opinion and they're going to argue with you later. So you said to me, don't you think that?
I didn't even catch that. Yeah, you're right.
Or you said, do you think that?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to toss it back to you. I'm going to say, my guess is, and I'm using this as an example so people could see how it works. Because usually when you ask a don't you think that question, you give your answer and then the other person had something they really wanted to say. So instead of me answering that, or before I answer it, I'm going to ask you, Ollie, what do you think?
Thank you for tossing that back. And actually, you just taught me something about I was doing during an interview I didn't even realize I was doing. So first of all, thank you. I think because it's a sensitive topic, and I think I was kind of going all over the place. I see a struggle right now between women wanting to own their behavior versus blaming the systems they're within. And maybe it's a both and question. What are your observations on that, over the years, and also seeing business change through the decades?
Yeah. Again, we live in a white male system, right? And so the white male system creates the rules. And there isn't a lot of incentive for white males to change a lot because they get all the rewards. And when you think about any system, a system is designed to perpetuate itself. And so a white male system perpetuates itself. So as women take 2 steps forward in their confidence and taking control and saying, yeah, I need to be responsible for my own life and my career, they get pushed a step back. I mean, Susan Faludi talked about that in Backlash.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Right?
I forgot
that
about
was
that.
Years ago. Yeah, it was easy to forget because it was so long ago. That's happens when you get old. You remember all this old stuff. But anyway, they get pushed back. And so it's a dance, isn't it? It's a dance where women get the confidence and they start to move forward. And then the more confident they get, the further back they get pushed. Look what happened after Hillary Clinton ran for president. Now, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Hillary Clinton ran for president and there was a backlash against women. Because if you look at what's happening in Washington now, I mean, all of a sudden, women were persona non grata. Now, the pendulum is starting to swing back the other way again because people saw what was happening, and women were taking more control again. I don't know what's going to happen. Now, with that said, on this webinar this morning, I had this guy ask a question, and he said, what can I do to make sure it's an equal playing field for both men and women? So going back to your question, there are enlightened men, particularly those who have daughters and who have professional wives who work outside of the home or used to work outside the home. They may be working inside the home now in different ways. But, I think you have those men who we need as allies to help us move things forward. But pointing the finger at anybody isn't going to help. So, and that's what I talk about. Nice girls don't get the corner office. I'm not pointing a finger at men that they do something wrong. I'm saying I only have control over one person, and that's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my behavior.
I remember that's just what I loved about the books that I've seen is that it is about, okay, what I can do. Right. And that helps shift systems over time.
Exactly. And when you get a critical mass, I mean, that's my hope is that, can I develop a critical mass of, recovering nice girls? Because that's what I always say. I am a recovering nice girl of recovering nice girls who don't tolerate certain behaviors. Because once that happens, the boundaries in the workplace are going to start to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have to, but they're not going to change because males change them for us.
Now, I've one more question on application of this, and actually, given current times, so many of us now are on Zoom calls, and the meetings could be a lot different because you may not see some of the body language. What is your advice on how your advice applies to today in the virtual world when people are forced to work from home still most of the country?
Yeah, and I do talk about that, especially with women. And I say, if you're on a Zoom call, you need to show up professionally. Now, you can't always be seen. I know that some Zoom calls are just audio only and some of them are visual, but either way, you have to show up. So if it is visual, you make sure you show up in a quiet place where the dogs and the kids have been leashed, and just kind of put away or whatever you need to do with them, where your backdrop looks professional. It doesn't look like, you left the dishes in the sink. So visually, you need to show up appropriately, even if only from the waist up, you are dressed professionally. You need to be dressed professionally. And so you show up that way, whether it's audio or visual. You need to be at the table, and being at the table means you speak up. You don't just sit there quietly. Now, I know that in Zoom calls, it's kind of hard because when people talk over each other, different kinds of things happen. But don't be put off by the fact that maybe somebody talked over you, so they didn't hear you starting to talk. You need to go back to it and say, before we finish, I'd like to get my opinion in about this because I think it's important that we look at whatever. So you show up. You also be the person who helps facilitate the meeting. A lot of times people are terrible at facilitating Zoom meetings. So if nobody's doing that particularly well, you say, it looks like we need somebody to facilitate this. If nobody has a problem with it, why don't you raise your hands and I'll call on people as they raise their hands. So there's a lot of ways you can show up and show your leadership capability and show your professionalism. But just because you're working from home in pajama bottoms doesn't give you, the right to be any less professional.
Yeah. Up your game. Even in the pajama bottoms.
Yeah, exactly.
I love this. Lois, before I ask my final question, can you share with everyone a bit more about where to pick up the new audiobook, where we should follow you? What else is going on? Anything?
Yeah, I really encourage you to follow me on LinkedIn because I post articles of interest and my opinion on things and just different things I think that women might be interested in. So I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me there. And my website, drloisfrankel.com, it has free resources where you can take self-inventories and they self-score, and you can look to see, where are some of my development areas? There's also a link to my books. It'll say Lois Frankel Books, I think. You can order my books there. You can order my books on Amazon, obviously. So lots of ways to kind of find me. And you can just Google me, and I say Dr. Lois Frankel, not because I need to be self-aggrandizing, but because there is a Lois Frankel who is she's a Florida legislator.
Yeah.
So just if you put in Dr. Lois Frankel, you'll get all kinds of stuff where you could find me.
Yeah, not the one in Palm Beach or whatever.
Not the one in Palm Beach.
I got there too, and I'm like, this isn't her. I've got to go back.
Yeah, it was like one of my staff members one time came to me and said, Lois, there's this I Hate Lois Frankel website. And I thought, how could people hate me? And then I realized it wasn't about me.
There's some tribe who hates you anyway. That comes from being an author, but at least it's not so visible.
Exactly. Well, it comes from, just saying nice girls don't, right?
Yeah. And having an opinion, which is what you have to be. And I do think, when the women I'm working with, often they're moving into that leadership position. And I want to emphasize, I made the joke earlier about the women listening about being more on the bitch side. I hope I don't get hate mail from that. But what I mean is like they're confident, assertive. And so I hope all of you took something magical away from this today. Thank you. This was fantastic. Last bits of advice, if you could share 3 great pieces of advice for the women listening.
Yeah, I think number 1 is, I know this sounds like an odd piece of advice. People always say to me, where'd you come up with that? But it's, you pay in advance for capacity. It was probably the best piece of business advice I ever got. And pay in advance for capacity means you're going to put money out when you can least afford it to build the infrastructure you need to grow. In my case, I was sitting in a client's office and I was thinking about all the things I had to do when I got back to my office. And so I wasn't paying attention. And I thought to myself, this is no way to be doing business. You need to have a full-time assistant. I had like a part-time assistant. And I said, you need a full-time assistant. And so when I could least afford it, I hired a full-time assistant. So I paid in advance for capacity. And it was the best thing I ever did because that gave me the opportunity to A, focus when I do really well, and B, go out and do more business development. So that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is you're good enough. You're good enough. That I think for many women, and myself included, you always think that there's something wrong with you and that if you just tried a little harder, you'd be perfect. When in fact, perfection is an exercise in futility because you can never be perfect. You can never be perfect. Whether it's put out the perfect report or be the perfect parent it's impossible. So you need to know that you're good enough and that sometimes good enough is good enough. Watch a guy clean a bathroom. He knows that good enough is good enough, right? So just know that you're good enough. And I think the third thing would be that you are not defined by your past, that you're not defined by your past, that it is never too late to rewrite your script. I don't care if you're 25 or 55 or 75. I am continuing to rewrite my script all the time. People see me as a best-selling author, but I'm just about finished with that, Ollie. I'm moving on to some other things. Okay. What I always wanted to be was a photographer. COVID has allowed me to take photography classes and really get out there and use my camera more. And what's important to me is creativity. So you're not defined by your past. You define yourself every single day in the way you want to be defined.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us and for you're even better than I thought you'd be. If that makes sense. Like, you first, when you're interviewing someone, you hope they're going to be what you expect, but when they're even a level above, and I love the practical tips you offered, which are sometimes hard to pull out of people. I just really appreciate you and all you've done. And thank you for being here with us today. And we can't wait to follow you online.
Thank you so much, Ollie. And one other thing, if people who are listening will contact me through my website, I will send them a free companion guide that goes along with Nice Girls Don't Speak Up and Stand Out. And it has a lot of the things in it that I talked about today. Just tell me that you heard me on Ollie.
I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to alliebrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.